Good morning, traders. This is Wilkey with Startup Trading. It's 8:37 a.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, May 27, 2020. So it is not Groundhog's Day, although today looks a lot like yesterday when we came in. So as we peruse across what happened yesterday, basically, if we look at where Friday spent its action down here in the value areas, right? The Russell, the S&P 500 and the Dow, right? They all spent time significantly away from that yesterday. We did have futures trade Monday. I'm not looking at that. I don't really care about that. I don't participate in that, and most traders don't. So as we look at, from Friday to Tuesday, you can see that the NASDAQ just total weakness, right? It started off looking around the same as the other three, but while they kind of held up yesterday, the NASDAQ, lost the overnight low. If you look, none of the other three even lost it. The ES came close to testing it, but the Dow and the Russell nowhere near it during the session yesterday. So not only did it come back down, it got into Friday's range and Friday's value area. It didn't hit the point of control, but it got pretty close. So also one thing to note, as we had this large gap up, right, from when the opening bell rang for all the indices, except for the Dow, was pretty split, right? There's a little bit more trading above the open than there was below the open for the session, and it pretty much closed right back on where it started, where the bell rang yesterday. So the rest of them, right, it was more of a down tick, right? It was just traders taking profit up there, and then we had a nice flush into the close. So anyone who was just holding on, that wasn't planning on holding past the end of the session, right, they got screwed for waiting, because that's what happens on Wall Street, right? You're out of position. Your time is running out if you plan on closing your position, and they laid it to you. So as we look at news events and everything before we get more into today's action, we have consumer confidence today at 10 a.m. And then we don't really have anything that American scheduled news until Thursday. So we'll get into more of that. I'm sorry. Yesterday was Tuesday. I'm all off. So we have nothing really scheduled today. Oil inventories won't even be today. So as we look at, we have tomorrow GDP and pending home sales. So we'll watch that. So I just wanted to, since I forgot to share this on Twitter yesterday. We'll go down and look at the indices again real quick. So 5 days, the Russell is the outperformer. The rest of them are pretty much in the middle of the pack. Notice on a 5-day comparison chart, the NASDAQ is the laggard, right? Looking at a 10-day, Russell outperformer, NASDAQ the laggard. Looking at 15 days, the NASDAQ is number 2, but, kind of flattish up here, with the Dow and the ES closely catching it, with the Russell outperforming. Looking at the 15 and the 60-day, you can see 15 days, it's, again, Russell, NASDAQ, and Dow and ES. Looking at the 60-day cash, you can really see the outperformance still from the NASDAQ, the relative weakness in the Russell, but you can see it. Look at the gap that it's closed between the Dow and the S&P so far. And if we look at the 20 cash market year to date, right? So if we look at the close of last year, not the open of this year, but the close of last year, and just compare it out to see what's happened, this is where we are. So dominance by the NASDAQ, right? It's the only one that's even close to being positive, and is positive for the year, right? It's up about, we could go up here and look. Year-to-date cash, it's up 7.5%. The ES is still down 7.5%. The Dow is down, 12.5%, and the Russell is down 16.5%. So looking at yesterday's distribution up close with the ES, and I shared this with the group as soon as the right around when futures opened last night. But 3005 to 3011.75 is where the meat of the distribution took place for the ES yesterday. Look at the Nasdaq. It was just a sloppy mess. I mean, there's really nothing notable in this whole thing except for nobody really wanted it. So looking at the overnight session, 51.75 points, so 51 and 3/4 points. If we look at the overnight low, it's right on in line with yesterday's low. It went a tick or so underneath of it. Right now we're hitting our head on R2, and we had overnight news. We had the EU unveils a plan to borrow 750 billion euros to aid coronavirus recovery. So why that helps because obviously the EU is going to take that money they borrow and they're going to dump it in the S&P 500 and the American stock market. So there's your logic on Wall Street. So there is no logic in trading. You just need to trade the charts, right? Trade what you see, because I'm sure the taxpayers over in the EU would be very happy if they borrow money to help out the American stock market. So as we look at this, right, we're up here, we're hitting like R2, as I said, and really holding above value area high, which is that 3010 quarter down here. So looking at all the indices, right, we can see that the Russell is up near R4. The Nasdaq is basically trading in value, right? Its low was right around yesterday's low as well. If you look at all the indices, right, we'll cover this real quick. Yesterday's low, yesterday's low, yesterday. So the green dotted line is the overnight low. The green dashed line is yesterday's bell low, right? They're all in line with each other in the overnight session. So, and if you look now, everyone except for the Nasdaq, right, is above yesterday's high, so obviously above value area high, and trying to make positive movement up. If you look at the overnight high for the Nasdaq, it's basically right at the point of control, right where the most amount of volume took place yesterday. So it's just just under it, and it's just trapped in value right now. So I would avoid the Nasdaq unless you're looking for something to short today. If you think today's going to be a short day, that would be your puppy. If you think it's going to be a long day, it's hard to say how much more the Russell can muster from here, because to be honest with you, I've got out of favor the last 3 years of really watching the intricacies of the Russell, because it's been the laggard and I just didn't want to participate with it. So normally for the ES, right, if we're around a 4B, we're not going to get much over it. I don't think the Russell is going to respect those floor trader pivots as much, but you have to understand that regardless of that, you're still probably closer to the top end of today's trading range than you are near the bottom of it. Not saying we're going to get back into yesterday's range and crash lower, but the beta play may have happened overnight for the Russell. So probably not too much more up here. We'll look at the charts, but remember, we do have open air on everything above us except for the Nasdaq for the most part. We'll get into that in a second. So as we look at the sequences overnight, you got the ES really holding a micro draw from 3,475, 3,450 up to 3,035. I would not pay attention to that draw. I would still, you want it to come back to 3009, 3015. There's no sense in being that aggressive. And if it doesn't come back down there, no big deal. Your risk to reward, if you take, trading is like real estate. You need location, location, location. It's everything, right? Trying to get into the trend up in here just so you can chase it, right? Most days that's going to be not very fruitful, and if you do that 1,000 times, you're less likely to get anything good happening as a result, right? You want to become the casino, so you'd rather wait on these areas down here. basically yesterday's high to right in here is what you'd like to see trade again. So looking at the NASDAQ, we already talked about the relative weakness again. Like I said, if you want to short something, here's your lines of short. You got 94.53 to 94.64 is your next short with a line in the sand at 74.25. Looking at the Russell, again, it's at least coming back close to these 38.2s. That's 14.20.40 and 14.20 is the next buy zone with this basically a line in the sand at 14.08. Okay, what I want you to do, and this is why I'm zoomed out so far, is kind of focus on the speed and the volatility of those moves, right? So we're just looking back from the beginning of April, right? Nice moves up, back down. Nice moves up, back down. Consolidation, right? And then falter, consolidation, little falter, consolidation, little falter. Now we've moved up, and this is, not an insignificant move from, just from the 22nd till now, right? We're up basically over 100 points, right? 120 points right in here. So I'm going to zoom into the area that we're in now, but I want you to see how tight this is getting up here before I zoomed in, right? Because we're having to go in here. So I had, long before we reached this area, I had 3,027 as an area, a support resistance line that's a little bit more stiff for the ES. So we'll see if we, flirt back with it, but it would be nothing really for this not to come back and touch this rectangle sometime again, which is going to be that 29.95 basically to 29.89.90. So as we here I'm saying it, say it again, 29.89. Well, let's just fix this up to 29.95. So 89 to 95 is really what you'd like to see coming here. I'm going to extend this out because in the future this will be tested again, right? So we want to see. So as we're coming back across here, we're going to zoom in a little bit more, right? And as we come across here, areas I'm watching, still yesterday's high, 30.19. That distribution high that we marked, right, from 3,005 to 3,011.75. I'm going to watch the top of 3,011.75. There should be a lot of demand. It should be very difficult on any type of retracement. And think about it, if we drop down to there, traders are going to think we're really going to collapse, right? This should be around the floor for the next day or so, getting in there. And then 3,005 would be the very bottom of that level. Looking at the weak one, we'll look at the NASDAQ. We're used to it being the strong one. And again, we'll zoom out for a minute, kind of look and see how it's, chopped back and forth. We'll go out one more time frame. So, lots of movement. We're nice technical off the 92.50 back up, but it's not really holding these levels right up here. It's kind of rolling over already. So we'll see. Getting under 94.09, right, is going to be a little bit more bearish. Taking out yesterday's lows and staying below them, you're just going to get chopped down to 92.50. Potentially, you could stop at 93.12. But again, if you're bullish, just stay away from the NASDAQ if you want to trade to the upside on something. So the Russell, I'm going to, throw this down. I don't have any significant resistance until we get up to this 1582.30. So there's lots of room for this to run, lots of room for it to blow out those level 4s if it's going to be one of those days that it really does that for it. So keep in mind, just watch the sequences coming out here. And I'm not sure if Jack's sharing this draw or not, but since it is the most aggressive to the upside and it is the beta play, I'm sure he'll start tracking it because this is going to have a lot of opportunity as it tries to close this gap as long as it stays above 1377.30. Again, I haven't been watching that indice very close to the last, probably 24 to 30 months. I'll start putting it back on my radar as well. And then you've got 25,750 for the Dow above, that's minor, but you don't get major resistance up until 27,100 now. You got a few minor spots up here. We'll just cover this one for now. And again, just watching the sequence coming up off the lows for the Dow, and I would assume that's going to be difficult to get under these previous highs. So you're looking at 24, 775 basically. So as we peruse across there. So looking back at all the indexes, kind of putting some thoughts on the day for this, right? And you can see, NASDAQ, weak again. And remember, the news that really shot this up overnight, other than, this is where the market's heading, is Euro news. The Europeans, that money's not coming over here. So I don't know, what crack people are smoking. But again, you don't need to put logic in the stock market. You play the chart. So again, if you want to play to the downside, the Nasdaq's the one you should really be screwing with. If you want to try to look for places to get long, again, this 3019, and there's a couple other places between value area high to try to get long the ES if you think it's going to hold, right, and go back up. And then, if the Nasdaq does start getting below yesterday's low and holding, maybe it starts printing below S1, it's going to be very difficult for these other markets to, smoke higher and take out the overnight high. They might, consolidate around between value area high and where we are the rest of the session. Might, get some late day movement to shake out whatever people are waiting to the very end to get out of things. So this is probably a pullback that's buyable coming into here on a first test into those zones that we were just looking at. I hope this helps, and looking for a long test, and use your stops, right? I showed you how tiny we're consolidating up here compared to the moves we've had lately. It's ripe for a major pullback if these support levels don't hold. And I would expect that 30.23 half would trade today after the bell rings. I hope this helps. You guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.